Welcome. We bid you welcome. Yes, this is the 5 count when John, the music nut, my co-captain, and we discuss some wrestling stuff. So you've been following this show. You know we've been talking about Dark Side of the Ring. So we're up to season 3 this time. But first, before we even get into that, John, the music nut, how you doing, my brother?
I'm doing great, my brother. How about you?
Sweating. And I,
Yes.
and I ain't sweating to the oldies either.
Mm-mm.
Here in Alabama, we've been having we've been having a major heat wave, and I ain't talking ECW heat wave either. But it's been toasty down here in the South. So yeah, I'm ready for winter. And we don't get much of a winter here in Alabama sometimes, but at least we don't get the snow like you guys get up home. So
That's true. Although last year we didn't get much last year at all. We've had years where we really got slammed, but last year, no, it was we didn't get much. It's probably one of the lowest snowfall totals we've had in a winter
yeah.
ever. We had some bitter cold, but the snow we were pretty fortunate.
And
So
my mom is always thankful for that because to her, snow is a 4 letter word. So
mine too.
yeah, when I remember
Don't like snow.
for a big birthday she had a few years ago, I thought about flying up for her birthday, and her birthday's in January, and
Oh,
and it's a good thing I didn't, because if I had, I wouldn't have been able to get home back here to Alabama for a while, because like the day of or the day before they got hit with like 2 feet of snow.
mhm.
So they had some poor mom. She was all by herself for her birthday because nobody could get over there, and nobody could drive. But we're not here to talk about snow. We're here to talk about some other 4 letter words that were mentioned in episodes of Dark Side of the Ring season 3. Um, Anybody who's watched these shows, especially if you watch them like I do now on Amazon Prime, you pretty much get these completely uncensored. So you're not getting any bleeps like you do on Vice TV or on cable
Right.
TV or anything like that. So if you're offended by a lot of F bombs and a lot of harsh language, then maybe this show's not for you. But if you're okay with it, then I say let's get into it, because these shows, probably the ones we're going to talk about the most, probably had the most language in them, but that's okay,
Oh yeah.
because these subjects were probably the deepest. We're not going to do it like what we did with season 2. We're only picking 5 episodes from it this time. I might allude to a couple of them here and there, but we're not going to go into every episode like we did with season 2. We're just going to these 5, I think, were the ones that really probably spoke to us the most. So with that being said, John the Music Nut, lead us off with the first episode that we want to talk about.
All right. Thank you, John. We're going to talk about Chris Canyon. Who's
Who
better than
better?
Canyon? Nobody. This was a very interesting episode. Chris Canyon was a talent. Chris Canyon was a wonderful performer. He never quite caught on, but he was one who had a lot of respect of his peers, as he gave good promos, but more importantly, his talent in the ring. He can tell a story in a ring. He was a dynamic athlete. He also had a lot of mental health issues, which the show goes really deep into. They talk a lot to Diamond Dallas Page, who was one of Chris Canyon's best friends. Self high five. There you go. Also talked a lot to James Mitchell, who was the Sinister Minister, a very underrated talent in the history of pro wrestling. He was a excellent manager. I think by the time he really got onto the national spotlight, they were phasing a lot of the managers out. But he was very good in this episode. You also had a lot of the wrestlers that Chris would mentor later on, like Brian Cage, like the Young Bucks, who were also so strong in this episode. But this episode focuses on Chris Canyon, who was a talent, but he had demons. And those demons, unfortunately, got the best of him. But he was a tremendous talent, and I'm glad that they gave him put the spotlight on him. I didn't realize how much he was out there. Like, as the big thing with this show was he was gay at a time that it wasn't fully accepted in sports. It wasn't wasn't accepted much at all. Now it's accepted, but at the time he was coming up in the 90s, it still wasn't. And it was something that he held to himself that only James Mitchell knew for the longest time. It wasn't until the last few years of his life that he started talking about it. And then by that point, there were already more people who were gay and in athletics. And he was going to try to use that to push his career to the next level, and it didn't work out for him. And it goes into a lot of things that he was featured prominently in WCW as Mortis when he had the feud with Glacier. I do remember that pretty well. When he came into WWE, they brought him out in one of the stupidest things I've ever seen. They had him come out of the closet singing "Do You Really Want to Hurt Me" by the Culture Club, and The Undertaker gave him a stiff beating. That was a real beating. He probably took care of him a little bit, but no. I think I didn't understand that at all. And I love The Undertaker. But I didn't get that at all. And I do remember that happening.
Yeah.
WCW got a little more of a push, but he never really caught on to the major leagues. In my opinion, when he went to the smaller leagues and was working more as a mentor, I think he found his calling. I think if he had thought that way, now I'm not in his head, I think I would have looked at as a sign of this is what I have to do now. Just like you have professional athletes who don't quite have the ability, they become head coaches. You see that, like Gary Kubiak, he was always backing up John Elway, and all you ever heard about was how smart he was, and he would become a coach someday. And he became a coach in the NFL who won Super Bowls. At least I believe he's been in Super Bowls. So I think that could have worked for Canyon in this case, but he still wanted to be a star. He also had a lot of personal issues going on as well, with drugs and his finances and things. But it didn't end good, as a lot of these shows don't. But I'm glad that they put a focus on this unique talent that a lot of his fellow wrestlers spoke of very highly.
Yeah.
So rest in peace, Chris Canyon. You were a heck of a talent, and I wish you were still around, because you'd still be making positive waves in the wrestling industry.
Absolutely. Yeah, the things that struck me the most about this episode were, having knowing that he was gay and having to keep that secret. And it was like he had to be a slave to his secret, but then he also had to be a slave to those who knew about that secret. Right. like James Mitchell or Vandenberg, whatever you want to call him from that time. James Mitchell knew it, and he was probably the closest to Canyon at that time. And when Canyon would have those bipolar moments, where he would almost practically kill Mitchell, he almost held it over his head. Hey, I know things about you.
Right.
Don't make me spill that secret out. So it was like almost like he was holding over Canyon's head a little bit. But again, that was I can't imagine what that had to be like for Canyon or for Mitchell. You know, that's just a tough place to be in when you're in that situation with dealing with that mental health stuff, knowing that you're you're putting somebody in a lot of harm that knows things about you that could really damage you badly, you know. So you know, another quote that Mitchell said was like, Candy would say, "You have no idea what it's like to live inside my head."
Yeah.
And boy, I'll tell you what, I know that feeling very well. I there's many days I look at my wife sometimes I'm like, I only wish I could be. I wish somebody could just get inside my head and they could see exactly what I see and what's inside my head, so they can understand who I am as a person better. Because I don't even know how to explain it sometimes. And that's maybe I need to go to therapy. I don't know, but anyway, that's neither here nor there. But I certainly relate to that comment, and I felt that. I went back and I went to Uncensored 97, I think it was, to watch a Mortis and Glacier match, and I thought it was interesting. It was supposed to be a martial arts rules match, which I thought, this looks like a regular wrestling match. It doesn't seem very, I don't see where I'm getting the whole martial arts rules, Matt, but whatever. But yeah, he wasn't like a really tall guy, but he was still a big guy,
Yes.
but he could move well, and you just didn't see a lot of that. You didn't, in the Land of Monsters, they didn't always move that well. And this guy, he had some good agility and he could move good. So yeah, it was a good match. It was a shame he got stuck with Glacier because I remember them building Glacier up, and then he finally hits, and then they're like,
Yeah.
okay. It was like crickets, they because they built him up for months
They
with
did.
all these goofy promos and whatever, or little vignettes, and then he finally hits the ring, and it's like, that's it. That's Glacier. Yeah. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but it didn't set the world on fire from what I remember.
No, no.
So, but yeah, I mean the whole bipolar thing when he got diagnosed with that, I think he got diagnosed with that too. I mean,
Yes.
that doesn't help, but anybody, my heart certainly goes out to him because of that and the whole mental health issues, we're going to be talking a lot about on this episode. So yeah, rest in peace, Chris Canyon. I hope he found his peace that he was looking for. But yeah, because he would have been very influential in today's market, especially I know AEW especially would, because I know they are very, very sensitive to the mental health, to the whole, the acceptance of gays and the whole LGBTQ plus, folks. So I know that's a big thing for them. And I know there's a lot of other promotions that are very, very kind now to that. So, yeah. So we go from the world of Chris Canyon to the ultra violence of Mr. Nick Gage. So this was one that I felt a personal connection to, because I just got to see Game Changer Wrestling about a month or so ago, and decided to hang out afterwards, and I got my picture taken with Nick Gage, and said hey and stuff like that, and I was like, you know what, this guy's the real deal. He's like you and me. He's no bodybuilder. He doesn't have this great physique or anything like that. He's just a normal meat and potatoes, tri-state area dude. That's what he is, man. And this show certainly shows that. Yeah, he got into one of the other episodes that was featured in this season is the the FMW with Onita, and the influence and how that would influence, you know, ECW, CZW, which was where Nick Gage breaks into with his brother Justice Payne. And you watch the FMW show and you see all these different things, and I'm watching that show, and I see the one part where Onita and Terry Funk have that big death match, the big exploding death match, and they can't get Funk out of the ring, and so he rushes into the ring and he covers over Funk, and I'm like, now I know where AEW got that from. For those who remember the John Moxley, Kenny Omega death match, explosion match that they were supposed to have, and Kingston can't get Moxley out of the ring, and so he gets in there and he covers him up. Of course, the ring doesn't explode; you get these little sparkler things that goes up instead. So I don't know if that was a botch or if that was how it was supposed to be. But anyway, so you get that, so now you get the CZW people, and they are taking that FMW and ECW stuff to a whole nother level.
It's true.
Plates of, these panes of glass, light bulbs, barbed wire doors, tables, fire, tournament of death matches. These guys are nuts. These guys are certifiably insane to be doing this kind of stuff for the kind of, but they found a niche crowd that loves this kind of stuff. And that kind of energy is what they thrive on. And Nick Gage thrives on that energy that the crowd gets when he takes that pizza cutter and he starts slicing people's heads open, and then he takes it, there's an energy that comes with that. And I know, I know WWE wrestlers and AEW, they feed off that energy of the crowd. That's one thing. But when you get a crowd of people who's just as bloodthirsty as you are, yeah, that can be a little worrisome at times. One of the big things that brings Nick Gage into real forefront is the tournament of death match in the finals, where he meets with a German guy named Thumbtack Jack, I believe his name. Yeah, Thumbtack Jack. And this is the finals, and of this particular tournament. And so this ring, there's all these light bulbs, all these long light bulbs all around the ring. And Thumbtack Jack throws Gage into the one side, and he goes tumbling through it. Well, the one thing about breaking light bulbs is sometimes they will get you, and this one got him like right up under the armpit. And thank God for one of the video guys being right there on top of it, and say, hey, he's cut, and he's cut bad. The blood's gushing out of him. If a camera guy hadn't been there, Gage probably would have gotten back in the ring and probably would have bled out. Wow. Let's just put it that, let's just be honest there. So they take Gage to the back. They have to get a helicopter and to fly him to the hospital. And, he coded. He was certified dead for about 7 minutes. And they managed to bring him back, but in like a week or two later, he's back in the ring again, doing this stuff. But the problem with that kind of style of wrestling is that stuff's real. Glass is real. That all the thumbtacks and all that stuff, that when that hits you, that's real. And I don't know. I don't think you can do enough DDP yoga to help you overcome some of the pain that you get from some of that stuff. So he gets hooked on all these different painkillers. Then he gets hooked on heroin. Well, then he winds up on the street. He's homeless. He's like, okay, I got to do something to make some money. What does he do? He goes and robs a bank. Well, what's a bank robber normally do when they're going to rob a bank? They put a mask over their head. When Nick Gage goes to the ring, he's got that bandana pretty much covering up his face. Nick Gage, he's going to the bank, and his face is completely, like you're seeing me and you.
Right.
You
Yep.
know, it's like, what's, you
Mhm.
know, what was he thinking? But, you know, he would do time, you know, it changed him. You know, at first it didn't. He had to go back in. He wound up having to go back to prison because he tried to get around the system because he got back in bad habits. But, you know, he said, hey, I'm gonna get it right this time. You know, by this point, he's lost his parents who had been split up. You know, he's lost his mom to breast cancer. Then, you know, his brother, he had a falling out with his brother over time. You know, and then of course his brother was hooked on bad. You know, he got in a lot of bad demons. You know, he commits suicide jumping off the Walt Whitman Bridge, I believe it was.
Yes.
And you know, but Nick's like, okay, I gotta go. I gotta keep going, man. I can't stop, you know. And you know, he devotes that to the MDK, the murder, death, kill fan club thing. And you know, these people love him. You know, these people go nuts for him, and they let him know that. You know, he has that connection. It's like John Moxley said, Vince McMahon would kill to have somebody that can connect with an audience at the level Nick Gage could connect with an audience. You know, and that's saying something. And I completely agree with that because I if I had hung around and if I had asked him, hey, you want to go out for a well, I don't know if he had gone out for a beer now, but I'm like, dude, I'd go out with a beer. I'd go out and drink a beer with this guy, you know, because he just seemed like that. He just seemed that real. You know, that's kind of what helps you connect with that audience. So yeah, he had his addictions, he had his depression and his mental stuff, but you know, he's got this thing with the Game Changer Wrestling, the you know the whatever this thing stands for that he does, but that's his motto, and that's what he lives by, and he connects with the people. So there you go. Nick Gage, and he was like I said, he was a cool dude. I'm glad I had the chance to meet him, and I hope I get to see Game Changer Wrestling when it comes in the area again because I will definitely go.
Did he is he similar to what he was when you met him? Was he that same guy that you see here on the show?
I think so.
Okay. With like but like a little calmer with the fans, I would hope. You know,
Oh yeah.
I mean
Oh
he
yeah. The match he took place in was a 6-man tag,
Mhm.
and you know one of his tag partners was Alabama's own Action Mike Jackson. And if y'all know if any of you know who Mike Jackson is, you know he's like almost 80 years old and he's still getting in the ring. So this match was mostly a traditional match. There was not much of the death match type stuff included. Yeah, you might have had some pretty heavy spots, but for the most part, only until they introduced it, they didn't use tables; they used doors. And they set this guy up on the door, and one of the other tag partners of the 6-man on because he was on the tag side with Mike Jackson, and I can't think of the third guy's name off the top of my head. It was a young kid, and the young kid, you know, Mike Jackson would take him like do the Undertaker thing where he do the arm twist and then he'd get up on the ropes and he'd literally walk all around the ring side with him. Well, so his tag partner kind of does the holds him up and holds him around the ring, and he gets to the point where he splashes on the guy that's laying on the door, and he crashes him through the door, and boom, 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 1, 2, 3, and there you go. So no, Nick Gage was super, super cool to hang out with for a second, and he
Nice.
seemed really genuine to be amongst the people like that. So, but yeah, it was like I said, I would do it again in a heartbeat.
That's awesome. And one thing I'm not a fan of this kind of wrestling at all, but I will admit he does have a great rapport with his fans.
Oh gosh, yeah.
You could feel that in this episode. When John Moxley said, I don't know if I could say there's a few guys in WWE that are like that too. Now, granted, WWE is gonna push that character really hard,
Yeah.
where it was very organic with excuse me, it was very organic with Nick Cage or Nick
Hmm.
Cage, I'm sorry. Um, yeah, so and he's got a very devoted girlfriend too, who's gone through a lot as well. Let's give her props too.
Absolutely. Sandra
Um,
seems like a neat lady. I
yeah,
don't remember if I saw her though at the event that I was at. I don't recall. She probably was there and I just don't remember off the top of my head. But I'm sure she had to be there in some way, shape, or form.
yeah, okay. So yeah, probably just sitting in the back somewhere. But yeah, I mean, it was an interesting episode. I didn't really know anything about Nick Cage until I watched this.
Yeah.
And I've learned a lot more by talking to John about him. But yeah, it's true. But
Yeah.
yes, this was a very good episode. And the stuff that he did with, oh gosh, I'm forgetting his now I'm having a freaking,
David Arquette.
thank you, David Arquette.
Oh
Having a
man.
brain freeze there. Wow, I'm just telling you, this is real. I don't mess around when I go out
Nope. Nope.
there. And David found that out.
He found out the hard way. He's like, just don't cut me. But again, like I said, you when you get that bloodthirsty crowd and you have that that mentality that feeds off that,
Mhm.
you just completely lose sight of all of that stuff. You know, he is like, I don't care if you're David Arquette, I don't care if you're Frankie Williams.
Right.
You're in the ring with me, you're gonna get hurt. You
He
know.
wanted to respect Arquette for going through that
Oh
too.
yeah,
That's
absolutely.
balls. That's balls.
Big time.
Yeah.
Big time.
So yes, this was a very interesting episode. And it was great to revisit this again.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're going to talk about a talent who's so underrated, Luna Vachon. Luna Vachon.
We go from one extreme to the queen of extreme.
That's right. And the queen of extreme. Oh God. Luna, what a talent she was.
Yes.
She also had a lot of mental issues that
Boy.
wound up costing her life too. But oh my God, I think what happened with her, she was such a talent, making a lot of these lady wrestlers that no, I should say they weren't wrestlers, they were talents. She was making them look like $1 million because she knew how to sell, she knew how to work, she knew how to create a match. She had that look, and she was a legit badass. Like you look at her, like if you saw her walking down the street, you'd be a little intimidated.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she might be short, but mighty, and in shape too. But she went through so much. This was a very interesting one. I never knew she was adopted until I watched this episode. I
Yeah.
thought that was Paula Vachon's daughter, not his adopted daughter. And how he wound up adopting her was interesting because there was a murder in the hotel room, in the hotel where he was staying, in the room next door. So the man got murdered. He started dating the widow, married the widow, and then adopted Luna.
Yeah.
Luna Vachon, though, this was a very good story because her son, Van, who's a
Yeah.
professional chef, he's a guy you'd want to just hang out with at the bar.
Oh yeah.
He was
Big
just
time.
so great on this. He was
Yeah.
excellent. Paul Vachon, who's still with us, he's in his 80s now. Him and Mad Dog Vachon, they were talents in the AWA for many years. Mad
Oh
Dog
yeah.
Vachon was an AWA champion a few times, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
He took it, like him and Vern Gagne were exchanging the belts there a little bit in the 60s, and he was an Olympic wrestler.
Mm-hmm.
And Paul Vachon was a badass. I remember Paul Vachon in the WWE when he was putting a lot of young guys over.
Mm-hmm.
But he would be like an undercard guy, but he was very good on this. I thought that Penelope Paradise was very good. Mad Maxine, you didn't hear. I remember Mad Maxine back in the WWE when she was with Moolah.
Yeah.
They tried to. I don't know whatever happened there. They didn't really. I don't. I don't know if
Mm,
they decided to go to Wendy at that point, or Wendy Richter at that point, or whatnot. But
right.
she was on a couple times. She won a couple squash matches, and that was it. But again, another talent gone too soon. She was featured very prominently in WWE. She had a great feud with Sherry Martel, and her and Sherry were really good friends, and that they both knew how to work. So that was a good feud. She's probably best known in WWE for being with Bam Bam Bigelow. Bam Bam Bigelow used to always call her main squeeze, and
Yep.
I
The
thought
main
they were,
squeeze. Oh,
yeah, the
they
main squeeze.
perfect.
They were great together. But she was a fantastic worker. But in the era when it was more about women being very attractive, she wasn't statuesque. She wore her makeup differently. She had that raspy voice like that. She they needed someone to put these talents, these models over. They needed someone to put Sable over, to put Stacy Keebler over, to put Tori Wilson over.
Hmm.
And I mean, I'm not, they were all beautiful women, nice people, but someone had to put them over, make them look like stars. And that was Luna's role there for a while. And I think they took advantage of her. I think she's an easy Hall of Famer to me. She's one of the best women who've ever been in the ring.
Absolutely.
And she could legitimately hurt you if she wanted to. But this was a very good episode. Mick Foley was great. Anytime Mick Foley's in an episode, it's gold. And
Oh
David
yeah.
Heath, Gangrel, and they wound up marrying after they were friends for the longest time. And they said, "I'd never date anyone like you." And the others saying the same thing. And eventually they got married. But they were a great couple. And I mean,
Yeah. They're perfect.
Gangrel was a pretty memorable character there
Oh yeah.
in the Attitude Era in WWE. Yeah, he was pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not going to put the belt on him, but he was an attraction. He had that vampire thing going on and all that, and so he was a talent. And
Hmm.
Medusa was very, and Medusa, of course, Medusa Maselli was very good. Debbie
Yeah.
Maselli,
Yeah.
she's always superb on these shows as well. But
Yeah.
yeah, Luna Vachon, I mean, a forgotten talent. Yes, she had some mental issues, and I think that probably cost her job there too. I think it did cost her a job.
I believe it did. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, more focus should be on her. And again, it was mental illness, but she was a great talent, and she should be she should get a lot more recognition than she gets these days. And again, great job by Vice and by the creators of this series for putting the
Hmm.
spotlight on her.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially again, if you guys haven't figured it out in this episode, we're talking a lot about mental health.
Yes.
So, and this is another one that would have been, uh, you can't focus enough on it. Even her son was like, what was the one thing that the one thing you got from, I guess, her time when like with the whole drug thing. It's like, yeah, don't do drugs.
Yeah.
Seriously, just don't do drugs. But just like we talked about Canyon, how proud of would Luna be looking at the Charlotte Flairs, the Sasha Banks, the Baileys, the Becky Lynches, the Oscars, the
Bianca
Kyrie
Belair's,
Sane,
yeah.
the Bianca Belairs, and the Rhea Ripley's, and all these different people. You imagine a match with Rhea Ripley and Luna in her prime?
Oh my gosh.
That would have been crazy. But I'm just saying, all of these women now, if Luna had been still alive to see this, I really think she would be majorly proud of what that maybe she was like a little stepping stone in getting it there.
Right.
There just wasn't enough talent to make a federation, a division thrive
Right.
until they started bringing in all the divas, who were more Playboy models than they were wrestlers. So that was the bigger thing there. But because Luna didn't want to she didn't want to be about the sexuality. That was
Right.
never ever her thing. But yeah, and then her time in ECW, she had a lot of different stuff in ECW. Um, I think she's even with Goldust there for a little while. I think
She
she did
was.
a spot with Goldust back in the WWE, but yeah, it just a shame that again, just taken too quick from us, and you know, but that's it's just that mental health stuff that just as we've been talking about it all throughout all this time, and it's just going to get even deeper because now we go into the world of Grizzly Smith. Yeah, boy,
Yeah.
this was hard. This episode was so hard. You could feel Jake's pain in this episode. You could you could feel Rock and Robin's pain, Sam Houston's pain, Jake's especially. I could because he was the bigger of the three. Sam got over a little bit, just didn't quite get there. Rock and Robin, again, she just came at a time when there just wasn't as many women in the division to really make it work good.
Right.
But she could still go in the ring too. And Sam was good. Sam Houston was good in the ring too. I enjoyed Sam Houston. But Jake was the one that obviously he was the biggest of all of them. But good Lord, that Aurelian Smith, Grizzly Smith, my God, that what an individual. Uh it's like no wonder those three had so many different, and the other one too. I had so many different mental health issues because of the things they had to experience between abuse, sexual abuse, addictions. And I mean, it was just a domino effect with all this stuff. Um, I've had the pleasure of getting to meet Jake on three separate occasions. Once was a local show and they brought him in, and this was during the time that he was probably rehabbing with Dallas at the time.
Okay.
So he was still kind of, I don't think he was totally there yet, but he was getting there. So he brought a guy. You would if you saw the first AEW pay-per-view, excuse me, um in the Battle Royal thing they did, there was a guy named Sunny Days. Well,
Okay.
so he brought Sunny Days along with him, but at that time he was known, he went by just a regular name. And he took on one of the GCW guys. And when this GCW, I should say, was Global Championship Wrestling, not Game Changer Wrestling. So this is a totally different
Right.
promotion, led by a guy named Mad Dog Dan Sawyer, and Micah Taylor was kind of a bigger guy there too. so so anyway, so Jake's brought in, and I went up to him during the like one apart, and I said, I just wanted to come up. I just wanted to shake the hand of a legend. Yeah, and he was asking me about, hey, Tate, how about taking a picture? And so, I didn't think my phone would do justice. And I was like, just knowing that you're good and that you're healthy, and knowing I got to shake your hand, that means the world to me. And then I would see the resurrection of Jake the Snake, the documentary that DDP did and his crew did on helping him and eventually Scott Hall. So I got into the DDP yoga program basically because of Jake's story, and man, Scott Hall's too was they were kind of the main reasons for why I got into the program. And um so I hoped I would get the opportunity to see Jake again, and I wanted to thank him for his story because it's what got me back. Because at that time I was getting up there in my weight. I was getting pretty heavy, and I wasn't doing good, mentally, physically, and stuff. So when I got into the DDP yoga program and I started going like gangbusters, and all of a sudden I get a friend request from one of the guys that works with Dallas. And I'm like, why is this guy friend requesting me? Yeah, he must be a good guy. So I'm gonna go ahead and accept on Facebook, right? So I get that, and then I get an invite. And I get this invite. This is 2017. And I get this invite to a thing called the Transformation Summit. And I'm like, hmm. So I talked to my wife about this, and she's like, go. I don't care what you got to do, go. Figure out how you can be there. So I did. And I got to go. Now Jake was not at that particular thing. In fact, I don't think I don't recall seeing any wrestlers or celebrities at that particular one at that time. But anyway, I got into that community where I was recognized. Oh no, I take that back. Zach Gowen.
Okay.
Got to see Zach Gowen. That was pretty cool.
Nice.
And anyway, and of course I got to meet Dallas himself, of course, obviously. But I got to be in a community of people where I got to share my weight loss story and just kind of what I was using as how I got where I was and just how it's been helping me and stuff. So it was cool to be recognized for the work I put into the program. So and so I got to go back for like the next couple of years, and I got to know a lot of friends and got to know some good people there, and really, and some of these people I still keep in contact. For those of you who watch the North and South Rock and Metal Connection, all those guys I met thanks to the DDP yoga program. I met Ben Carson and kind of pushed him and inspired him, and he really got going. And next thing he knows, he's with me on these inspirational story type of things. Roger, he's up in Canada. He was an older story than me. So we knew I knew these guys from the DDP yoga program. So I've gotten some really good friends out of this thing. So I believe it was 2018. That was the time I got to meet Jake in person again. And I'm like, this time I'm getting a picture with Jake because I'm not making this mistake I made 4 or 5 years ago. I'm getting a picture with him this time. And I told him about that story. I was like, I saw you at this local thing in Alabama, and he said, if you say so. he probably doesn't really remember it that well. But anyway, I told him the story. He's like, dude, I just wanted to thank you, for what your story has meant to my life and just how it helped me turn myself around. So when we take the picture, we're arm in arm, and he's, instead of flipping the bird, he's got the fist up. Yeah, he's got a good look on his face. He seemed happy. Later that day, I got to thank Scott Hall because he showed up. And so because they all kind of live in the area. So I got to thank Scott, rest in peace, Scott Hall. I never got, I so thankful I got a picture with him real quick. You got the too sweet thing, but I got to thank the guys that got me into the program. I got to thank them. So instead of diving so deep into Jake and his family story, that's where I wanted to go with this episode. Instead of even going deep where they were, I wanted to show here's where Jake's come out of it, and he seems to be a lot better, and he seems to be in a much better place now. So that was that's how I'm going to spin the Jake the Snake Roberts. I wanted to bring it up and be a little more happier about it. So there you go.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that story. Yes, I mean, we could go through these horrible times, but we can rise. We can rise above.
Absolutely.
We don't have to let our past define who we are now. And you're seeing that with Jake the Snake Roberts' life. And I thought in this show, I mean, yes, this was a hard one to watch, but I thought their brother Richard, who was never in the wrestling business, he seems like a good stand-up guy.
Yeah, he does.
I thought he was great on here. Um, and Robin, of course, she's done really well for herself. Sam Houston, who Jim Cornette said in this show, and by the way, Jim's gold on all these episodes in season 3 as usual.
Yeah.
I'm always going to talk highly of Jim Cornette. He said that Sam had the most physical he was the best athlete of them all. And he certainly did have it there back in the late 80s when I saw him feuding. He didn't look like a badass though, like Jake did. You know, Jake, you saw him, he looked like he could mess you up.
Yeah.
Sam was a skinnier guy. But again, he was a talent in the business. But this show is a hard one to watch if you've never watched it before. It really reveals a lot of things about Grizzly Smith. And I knew some of this story before, just from I watched the resurrection of Jake the Snake before. So it was a hard one to watch, but again, you can rise above this. You can turn a negative into a positive and rise. Look at where Jake is now in his life. I think he and Cheryl Roberts, or his second wife, who you saw in the WWE back in the late 80s, early 90s.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. When Jake was feuding with Ravishing Rick Rude.
Classic feud.
No, we have classic feud. What a great talent he was. Rest in peace, Rick Rude. Yeah, so there are decisions you can make and you can rise above. And always remember that there's someone out there who cares about you.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you have ever experienced the kind of stuff that, you know, whether it's sexual abuse, mental abuse, physical abuse, you know, please seek somebody out. You know, don't keep it bottled in. You know, don't let it fester inside of you, because that isn't healthy either. You know,
It's not.
So you know, the one of the things that I think always resonates with me is like when Jake would say, you know, Jake, he doesn't care about anybody. But William Smith Jr., totally different cat.
That's right.
You know, and he's like, I don't even know if William Smith Jr. exists anymore. You know, when he would say that, and it's like he becomes Jake so much that that's all he is now. It's like you don't even know who William Smith Jr. even is anymore, if he even exists. You know, don't let yourself become another person. You know, seek the help out. So
absolutely. So the Brian Pillman story. This was easily the best episode of the season, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Although the Grizzly Smith one was very well done, but it was just a lot harder to watch. Not that this wasn't hard to watch either. But wow, you forget how involved Brian was in the industry at this point. I remember when he came up in WCW, what was NWA back then.
Mm-hmm.
I remember Jim Ross selling him to the moon. Every match he was in, he always say, Jim Ross would go, Flying Brian, former Cincinnati Bengal, winner of the Ed Block Courage Award. He'd say that all the time.
Yep.
But he would wear the Cincinnati colors on his tights. He was a talent, but he wow. This episode, Kim Wood, his
gosh. Oh boy.
Oh my God. Mastermind. Intelligent man. Mastermind who you would not want to mess with, but
he comes across like almost like a Marine drill sergeant kind of thing.
Yes. Oh, he did. Oh, I thought he was great on here. Brian Pillman's family.
Yeah.
Is Linda a saint? I mean, she is the glue that has kept that family together all of these years, despite everything that they went through. And yeah, she is a heck of a woman. What a great woman she is. And Brittany and Danny and Brian Jr., they all seem like they're good places in their life. They all had the same sentiment that Brian really loved his kids. And
Hmm.
he would do anything for his kids, despite the things that he was going through. I mean, him going out to the ring and wrestling with that bad ankle when he shouldn't have been wrestling anymore, that's all about love for your kids. He was trying to provide for his kids.
Oh yeah.
Um, but Brian Pillman was a hell of a talent. Oh gosh. I mean, we were talking last week and even before we started filming today. Brian Pillman's match with Justin Thunder Liger in 1992, it kicked off that I always thought it was Wrestle War, but it wasn't Wrestle War.
Super Brawl.
Super Brawl, thank you. They were doing that lucha libre stuff long before you saw it here in the States. That was a prerequisite to it, and boy did they put on a show. But Brian Pillman was doing that a lot in WCW. I remember he was in it was a War Games match where he got power bombed by Sid Vicious and his head bounced off the top of the cage.
I
Do
think I
you remember
remember that
that?
now that, yeah, I think I do remember that now that she's mentioned it.
And you're like,
Oof.
oh, Brian, oh my God, it had to hurt. But
Yeah.
but yeah, this show does a good job of going through his career. The Hollywood Blondes were great. And
Yes.
Steve Austin was fantastic in this episode. You don't see him do much outside of WWE. Like I mean, I know he's had some other shows out there, but I think this might have been his only appearance on Dark Side of Ring.
I think so too.
But he was spectacular. Um, how he didn't want to team up with Brian because he was the US champion. Why are you putting these two guys who were singles together? But they made it work, and he said it was all Brian's idea.
Hmm.
Brian came up with the ring jackets, the tights, the name of Hollywood Blondes, that little thing. That was all. Brian had a great mind for the business. That's really exhibited on here. How he told Eric Bischoff to give
Yeah.
him his release, make it a real release. And then he went to WW but he was trying to do it to build his own name too, because he was getting over, but they weren't really giving him the push because during the time he was there, they had moved from more, it was a wrestling federation more based on athleticism to entertainment. That happened when they brought over Hulk Hogan.
Yeah.
And Hogan took a while before he got over. He got over as a bad guy. He wasn't really getting over as a good guy, but they thought they can have lightning strike twice with the train, say your prayers, eat your vitamins, Hogan. It just wasn't flying, especially with the way society was at that point.
Yeah.
Um, but Brian Pillman was a heck of a talent. They talk about him coming up through the Heart Dungeon. He was like a heart that actually did not have any relation with them, because a lot of the hearts, like Jim Neidhart, Davey Boy Smith, they married hearts.
Yeah. They married
Brian,
into the family. Yeah. Yeah.
they
Brian
married
didn't do
into the
that.
family. Yes, and Brian Pillman, you get through the dungeon, you're gonna they're gonna put you through more hell than you're probably gonna get in the wrestling ring.
Hmm.
But you become a pro. I mean, Stu takes you down to build you back up, is what he does. He breaks
Yeah.
you down, builds you back up.
Yeah.
So, but this was a great episode. They talk a lot about Rochelle, his would have been his second wife,
Yeah.
and unfortunately, rest in peace, Rochelle. Rest in peace, Melanie Pillman,
Yeah.
who was featured prominently on here, and then she died the following summer after this show had aired. They had a lot of WWE footage that I didn't think we'd see, particularly that interview. Remember watching that? Did you see that interview with Melanie after Brian died? I remember watching that.
I don't know if I watched it live, but boy, I remember when it happened. I'm like, hmm.
Yeah, I felt the same. co-signed with Jim Cornette on that. Why'd I never liked the grieving widow thing.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was
I mean, that was not a good, that was not a good move.
it was not a good move. And then when Melanie said, Vince told me we weren't going to talk about drugs, and that was the first thing they asked, she asked me about, and I'm thinking, I Vince has entertained me for years, but I could see him doing that too. Um, but yeah, it was very well done. I mean, some of the some of Brian's I know Brittany didn't like Melanie.
No.
She left she minced no words on that. Um, Excellent episode. It focused on Brian's career, his life, his addiction, sadly, and how we wound up losing him. And
Yeah.
excellent episode.
It's like Steve Austin said, what could have been had it not been for that accident?
Yes.
That horrifying accident that just totally messed his body up, but because well, unfortunately we'll never know. But yeah, yeah, the grieving widow part, that was, yeah. It sounds like Melanie had a lot of remorse about a lot of the decisions that were made.
Yes.
And I think she wishes that she could have a better relationship with the girls. At least it sounded like her and Brian Jr. made up for lost time.
Yes.
So, that's certainly good. I don't think you could have had the episode without Steve Austin's inclusion.
Yeah.
You really needed that, because there was certain things in that story that that was vital with him, with the sending of the weight belt to Brian Jr. and and all the how it all came together, and with the Hollywood Blondes. I mean, you really needed to have him in this episode. As far as Brian Jr., great that he got into wrestling. Now he's making the rounds in the Performance Center at NXT. Now, when he's actually going to be on, I don't know. But he really didn't make the kind of splash in AEW. Maybe a little bit in some smaller promotions, but he gets to AEW with the Varsity Blondes team, and they were treated more like the jobber to the stars kind of team, unfortunately. But
okay.
But I think here again, I think it's like Jim Ross had said, you have some of your dad's attributes, but stick with the positive ones. Don't go for the negative ones.
Yes.
Don't be a loose cannon. Take it. Because Brian Sr., he wanted to be that star a lot faster than they wanted him to be the star.
Right.
Because he wanted to be able to to support his family and everything. So he was holding out for the more money thing, because he felt he deserved it. But I think Brian Jr., I think hopefully learns he's going to have to go through the rigors and pay his dues, before he see if he actually has what it takes to carry on his dad's legacy. Can he talk like his dad? Well, the jury's out on that. I haven't really heard a lot of promos with him. I think he's got some of his dad's moves, but again, I think he just needs the seasoning, and he just needs the time. He needs the time in the ring. So hopefully that'll come along, and he can as long as they don't put the loose cannon part 2 on him.
Right,
we don't need another one of that. That doesn't need to happen. But we were talking about that Jushin Thunder Liger and Bryan match from Super Bowl, and I tell you what, you were not seeing that kind of stuff in 1992.
Mm-mm.
And not on WWF or WCW yet. That stuff wasn't happening that much. So at least not on that kind of stage. So that was pretty cool to watch that match again and just see, it's like, man, these guys were, Liger's just a legend anyway. So what he was doing, boy, you could tell they were way ahead of their time. And again, think of the possibilities for Brian Pillman. Had he not gotten in that accident, think of some of the people he could have taken on. Eddie Guerrero, a Benoit, Owen Hart.
Oh my gosh.
Some of the, I mean, maybe he and Owen crossed paths in Stampede before Owen left. I don't know. If y'all know that, for all you Stampede fans, hey, say something in the comments if you know something about that. I'll have to look it up if not. But I mean, gosh, I mean, there was certainly some great possibilities that just never got to take place. So
a healthy Austin against a healthy Pillman too. Oh my
yeah.
gosh.
Yeah.
That would have been awesome.
I mean, gosh, I mean, how about that? I mean, just let's talk about that little thing with him and Austin.
I remember that happening.
Oh my gosh.
That Raw? Oh, I remember watching that.
Whoa, that was
crazy.
That was edgier than some ECW stuff almost.
Oh my God, yeah.
Almost. I mean, because ECW was pushing a lot of boundaries too. But I mean, somebody getting shot on TV. Hello, that was a little too over the edge.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Especially for WWE. You just didn't. That was way over the edge, even for WWE, because we weren't really getting into the meat and potatoes yet of the Attitude Era.
Right.
We were just getting started with that. So, but yeah, boy, that was crazy.
It established their characters, though. It told you how much of a shit kicking badass that Stone Cold was. Mm-hmm. And it told you how crazy that Brian was. Yep. So they helped each other, but maybe not in that circumstance. That circumstance was too much. But yeah. I remember watching that, and I remember talking to my friends going, did you just see what I saw? Like, oh my, that was crazy for that time.
I mean, I think the story was, I don't think USA Network knew that was going to happen. No. And I think when the feed gets cut, some say that was actually USA Network that cut the feed. Because they were like, whoa, wait a second. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's the legend story I've heard. But either way, I mean, and gosh, we got to get Kevin Kelly, they're watching all of this happening, and that's just nuts.
Yeah. Thing about this story, though, when I think about it, this was a story of perseverance until the ankle injury.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because he had 30-some throat operations when he was a kid, which left him with that hoarse voice of his.
Yeah.
And what did he do? I want to talk more. I'm going to sell more. I'm going to make my character bigger. That goes along with my immense talents.
Mm-hmm.
And despite the fact that he was going, he wasn't faithful to his wives, things like that. He had a lot of stuff. He had a lot of loose ends in his personal life, although he was great to his kids. But but this would have been a story of perseverance, just how he walked onto the Cincinnati Bengals.
Yeah.
And he was I believe he was a defensive end, like 225-pound defensive end, when normally they're about 100 pounds heavier.
Yeah.
I mean, you see that story, and then early on he's in NWA, and Ric Flair takes a look at him and goes, put me and him in a match together, because Flair can make you look like $1 million.
Oh, absolutely.
You put him in with a guy who can work like Pillman. I remember watching that match, and my brother and I were watching that match together live, and we're like, this is good. This is like pay-per-view main event easy. And they put it on, they just put it on Saturday night show. And it was good stuff. I mean,
yeah, it was.
Pillman was a hell of a worker. I mean, and then later became a great promo. But again, it was that injuries, painkiller addiction. Yeah.
But then what killed him was basically just heart disease.
Yep.
It wasn't because of his demons. It was heart disease.
Yeah.
But
like Eddie Guerrero too. I mean, in the end, he was clean.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. He was clean. So yeah, another talent taken far too soon. It's unfortunately about the thing about Dark Side of the Ring is like, yeah, it focuses on a lot of talents that were taken way too soon, way
Right.
too quickly. And yeah, and gosh, there's so many more stories out there that I'm sure they could tell. Um, one guy comes to my mind is Louis Piccoli.
Oh yes. Oh my gosh.
He would be one. Season 4, we're going to get into they talk about Chris Candido, they talk about Bam Bam, they talk about Marty Jannetty's
Martin
still with us, of
Jannetty.
course, but
Yeah.
um yeah, I'm drawing
Well,
blank on
Junkyard Dog. Well,
Junkyard
Junkyard Dog's
Dog.
no longer
Thank you,
with us.
Junkyard
Adrian
Dog,
Adonis.
Adrian Adonis. So there's, they talk about some, again, a bunch of superstars that are no longer with us that, man, you wish they were. You wish they were so you could see the fruits of their labors in the influence that they gave to other performers,
They did.
so there you go. So we are not going to talk about, unfortunately, we're not going to spend time talking about the plane ride from hell. We're not going to talk about the steroid trial. As much as I love the Ultimate Warrior, we're going to let that one slide on this episode. I love the Warrior, so I do want to give him props for that. The collision in North Korea, although Scott Norton was gold in that episode, and
He
so
was
was Too Cold Scorpio. And if there's another one I'm missing, I can't
the
remember it.
Dynamite
Oh,
Kid episode.
oh, yes, I forgot about the Dynamite. Yes,
What a talent.
what a talent the Dynamite Kid was. I remember, I remember one of the first WWE shows I ever went to. After the first two I went to as a young child. The first one I went on my own. He and Davey were in the main event for the house show, and
Okay.
it was a steel cage match with him and Davey against his Greg Valentine. I want to say it was Beefcake, because I
Okay.
think that's who they were feuding with. So so it was pretty cool to see a steel cage match up close and personal and stuff like that. So I got to see the Bulldogs back then, and this was like 1986. But yeah, gosh, Dynamite Kid, another one, again with the addictions, mental health stuff, CTE stuff. I'm sure. We could go on and on and on with all the mental health stuff. Johnny Canine was the other episode that we didn't talk about.
Yes.
Um, you know, uh, don't get me wrong; these were all great episodes. Um, you know, uh, there's not been, there really hasn't been a bad dud in any of these, really. If you stop to think about it, they're all very well done. Just some topics are just really relates to us, I think, a little bit more
Right.
than some others. But I mean, Dynamite Kid and Warrior probably would have been the other two we could have really touched on.
Oh, yes.
But next week we will touch on the current season, which just wrapped up with the final episode talking about Marty Jannetty, and boy, that was an episode.
Yeah.
Anyway, so John, what do we need to be looking for in upcoming stuff that's down the pike, or what's down, or what's coming up on the pike, or what's down the pike?
Okay.
Something like
Well,
that.
let's see. What's what's what have we filmed that hasn't aired yet? I'm trying to think. I did a
We're
show.
all crazy.
There you go. Thank you. John and I, along with Peter Wicks and Peter Kerr, we did a show a couple days ago on Alice Cooper's From the Inside album. That was a
Yes,
fun discussion,
that was
and
so much fun. Yes.
what I didn't say in the episode was Peter asked me to do that show, and I had a copy of that on a dubbed cassette
Hmm.
in the late 80s, which I've lost. I hadn't listened to the album in 30 years.
Oh
When he
wow.
brought that up to me, I said, you know what? I think I might want to revisit this. So I bought the CD, and that CD that I show on the episode that's going to be coming out soon, I I only had that for about a month or so. So I was revisiting that album, and I liked it more now than I did back then. But that episode, that was a lot of fun. That will be aired in the near future, I know. And John, we all had some great discussions on there. I mean,
Yeah.
great memories of that album and how we feel that album ranks up against some of the others. I mean, yeah. But that one we have coming up on Rock Daydream Nation. Um, we did an episode on Grant's channel. We're doing our one and done series. We did one on Shadow King. That one hasn't aired yet, but that one is Ernesto Ramos, Byron Bolt, Grant Arthur, and myself. So that should be coming out soon. I'm not filming anything else this week other than the show we're doing right now. But I know next week I'm doing a show with Peter Kerr, and it's going to be about great rock songs that were 3 minutes or less. So that should be a lot of fun. I already gave him my selections. And we're doing a show on Grant's Rock Warehouse on August 24. I'm hoping we go live. The show is going to be called Wall Punchers. It's going to be about songs that we despise so much it makes us want to punch a wall.
Oh
Credit
boy.
to DC Tune Time, Daryl Collins, who's going to be on this show with us, along with Ernesto and Byron and Grant, for coming up with that concept.
There you
So
go.
that one's going to be fun. That's pretty much what I have coming up. I mean, those are going to be filming next week, and Shadow King's already at Shadow King and From the Inside. Oh, I forgot. I filmed a show last Sunday with Tim Derling and Mike LeBrain on Tim's Vinyl Confessions. And that's a show where we're trying to convince Mike LeBrain to be a bigger YNT fan than he already was. He wasn't too much into him. There you go. There's a copy of Black Tiger for you right now. So that should be aired in the next few weeks. That was my first show on Tim's Vinyl Confessions. Tim Derling's great. I mean,
Yeah.
we both have had great collaborations with him on the Contrarians, and it was nice to be on his channel. And yeah, great guy, wealth of knowledge. I mean, that guy could talk music all day.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
For those of you who if you really want to check out a really great channel, Tim's Vinyl Confessions, fabulous channel. He did a book on 8-tracks
called
Unspooled. I wish I had my copy that I could show here, but because I did get a copy, and it's wonderful. Just a wonderful story of his growing up with music and the 80s, decline of the 80s, basically, of the 8-tracks. Yes. And it's like something you'd never think anybody would want to talk about is 8-tracks, but he makes it such a good read and such an interesting read. So so I want to give Tim props on that. I did a long series with him on Grant's Rock Warehouse on April Wine.
Right.
We visited like a couple albums at a time. And this show stretched out. I mean, unlike the Wasp Wednesday thing, this was like a show like almost every month or something like that. So it took a long time, but my gosh, I mean, the different versions of April Wine things that Tim has, and from different countries and different this and that, and the wealth of knowledge, like you say, just phenomenal, just wonderful there. So it's great I always want to give Tim some props. I need to do it more often than I do, and I apologize for that, Tim. We need to do another show with him sometime. But I don't really have anything else other than that From the Inside, and I'm not sure when that one's hitting the YouTube airwaves or universe. Yeah. We'll certainly be looking for it. But yeah, I don't have anything else. I don't have anything else in the line myself. Life has kind of taken over for me a little bit, so I've been very busy with just work stuff, and so with a lot of things to deal with there. But after we do next week, we're going to do the the season, the current season of Dark Side of the Ring.
Mhm.
I think we're going to talk about a little off project side thing that we're going to do just as a one-off. That's kind of a fun thing. And then hopefully in September or so, we'll start getting into Armored Saint. And
Yes.
we'll do a week by week of their 8 proper studio albums. So certainly looking forward to that. So with that in mind, so we have, let us know what you think of Dark Side of the Ring season 3. What were some of your high points? You know, are you mad at us that we didn't talk about the Warrior? Come on, you know, we could, you know, let us have it. You know, we'll take you to parts unknown and we'll school you on the Ultimate Warrior if we have to. But yeah, like, share, subscribe. You know, check. You know, I tag a bunch of channels that y'all need to be checking out, whether it's Grant's Rock Warehouse, whether it's Rock Daydream Nation, Rock and Metal Invasion, Ryan's Vinyl Destinations. You know, there's Mega Jeff, Ron's Vinyl Sanctuary, The Music Vault, Darcy, Six Strings, Nine Lives. I mean, there's Contrarians. I'm tagging so many different people on these things. Check them out. There's a lot of wonderful content out there. And these guys, there's so many people, whether it's wrestling or music. Peaches and Power Bombs was one I meant to tag, and I meant to mention. They are another person I met through the DDPY program, by the way. So Tina, I'm giving you a little shout out there. You know, whether it's wrestling, whether it's music, these people know their stuff. You know, and don't take our word for it. Just check out those shows. You won't regret it. So for my co-captain, John the Music Nut, Johnny Metal, John Clouser the Metal Dead, this has been the 5 Count. We'll see you for next week for season 4 of Dark Side of the Ring. Take care.
Take care.